I am Grace, 32 years old, and I stood in the center of a five-star restaurant with a broken nose, blood seeping through the bandages, while my husband raised a glass of champagne to celebrate our love. Before I tell you about the moment the doors were kicked off their hinges and the screaming started, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The smell of expensive truffle oil and aged steak was making me nauseous. Or maybe it was the throbbing pain in the center of my face, a rhythmic hammering that synced perfectly with my heartbeat. I stood at the entrance of the private dining room at Lou Bernardin, one of the most exclusive spots in the city. 50 faces turned toward me. These were people I had known for a decade. Brandon's business partners. Our neighbors from the gated community. Even my own parents were somewhere in that sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, though I couldn't spot them through my swollen eyes. The silence that fell over the room wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, like the air before a tornado touches down. A fork clattered onto a china plate, the sound echoing like a gunshot. My husband, Brandon, stood by my side. His hand wasn't holding mine, it was gripping my upper arm, his fingers digging into the soft flesh hard enough to leave bruises that would match the ones on my face tomorrow. He was wearing his custom-tailored Italian suit, looking for all the world like the successful real estate mogul he pretended to be. He flashed that $1 million smile, the one that had charmed me 10 years ago, the one that now made my blood run cold. I know, Brandon's voice boomed, breaking the silence. He sounded jovial, like he was sharing a funny anecdote from a golf game. You're all wondering about the new look. He pulled me forward, displaying me like a prize poodle that had gotten into a fight. Grace here had a little attitude problem, he chuckled. He looked over his shoulder to where his sisters, Veronica and Candace, were standing. They were dressed in matching red velvet, sipping champagne, looking at me with eyes that glittered with pure malice. My sisters just helped her learn some manners, Brandon announced proudly to the room. They taught her some respect. Consider it a little fix for the next decade of our marriage. Veronica raised her glass. To respect, she chirped. To knowing your place, Candace added, giggling. The room gasped. I saw horror on the faces of the wives. I saw uncomfortable shifting from the men. But nobody moved. Nobody stood up. Nobody said a word. They were too afraid of Brandon's influence, or perhaps they just didn't want to ruin the dinner. Brandon looked down at me, his eyes dead and cold. Smile, Grace. It's our anniversary. I tried to move my lips, but the tape across my nose pulled tight, sending a fresh spike of agony through my skull. I tasted copper in the back of my throat. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a monster. But he didn't know what was coming. He didn't hear the heavy boots thudding down the hallway outside. He didn't know that the woman standing next to him wasn't the same weak, broken wife he had dragged out of the house an hour ago. The double doors behind us didn't just open. They exploded inward. To understand why I was standing there with a broken face, you have to go back 3 days. Just 3 days. Back to when I was still living in the delusion that if I just tried harder, if I was just better, everything would be okay. Tuesday morning started like any other in the Miller household. I was up at 5 a.m. Brandon liked his coffee brewed at exactly 5:15, and his protein scramble ready by 5:30. If the eggs were too runny, he wouldn't yell. Brandon never yelled in the mornings. He would just sigh, a long, disappointed exhale that made me feel smaller than a grain of sand, and dump the entire plate into the trash before walking out without a word. I was in the kitchen, staring at a spreadsheet on my tablet. I had organized the 10th anniversary dinner down to the minute. Seating charts, dietary restrictions, flower arrangements. I was an illustrator by trade, or at least I used to be before Brandon told me my art was a cute hobby that distracted me from my duties as a wife, so I had sketchboarded the entire event. The flowers are wrong, a voice sneered from the doorway. I jumped, nearly dropping the tablet. Veronica and Candace walked in. They didn't knock. They never knocked. Brandon had given them keys to our house 5 years ago without asking me. "Good morning, Veronica." "Candace," I said, forcing a smile. "What's wrong with the flowers?" "They're white lilies. Brandon's favorite." Veronica walked over to the kitchen island, picking up an apple and taking a bite without asking. She chewed loudly, looking me up and down with disdain. "Lilies are for funerals, Grace." "God, you're so morbid. No wonder Brandon is always so depressed coming home to you." I can change them to orchids," I stammered. "Don't bother," Candace laughed, opening my fridge and rummaging around. "You'll probably mess that up too. Just like you messed up keeping your figure. Have you gained weight? That dress looks tight." I looked down at myself. I was a size 4. I had lost 10 pounds in the last month from stress. My collarbones were protruding. But in their eyes, I was always failing. "I'm actually underweight," I whispered. "Don't talk back," Veronica snapped. "We're just trying to help you. Brandon deserves a trophy wife, not a, whatever this is." This was my life. Day in, day out. But the real trap wasn't the insults. It was the money. See, my parents were wealthy. I was a trust fund baby, as Brandon liked to joke. When we got married, I had an inheritance of nearly $5 million. But 2 years into our marriage, I went through a severe depressive episode after a miscarriage. Brandon was so supportive then. He brought me tea, he held me, he told me I didn't need to worry about anything. He brought papers for me to sign. "Just temporary," he had said, kissing my forehead. "Let me handle the finances so you can heal. You're not thinking clearly, sweetie. Let me protect you." I signed. I signed everything. Power of attorney, control of the trust, the deed to the house. I thought I was leaning on my husband. I didn't realize I was handing the warden the keys to my cell. Now, 8 years later, I had to ask him for $20 to buy tampons. He checked every receipt. He tracked the odometer on my car. If I drove 5 miles too far, I had to explain where I went. That afternoon, I was cleaning the master bedroom. Brandon had thrown his suit jacket on the chair the night before. As I went to hang it up, a piece of paper fluttered out of the pocket. I picked it up. It was a receipt from a high-end jewelry store downtown. Item: diamond tennis bracelet. Price: $12,500. Date: yesterday. My heart stopped. I didn't have a tennis bracelet. I hadn't received a gift from Brandon in 3 years, not even for my birthday. I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. $12,500. He had screamed at me last week for buying expensive organic strawberries, claiming his business was going through a rough patch and we needed to tighten our belts. He told me we might have to sell the house if I wasn't careful with the budget. And here was a $12,000 bracelet. Whatcha looking at? I spun around. Candace was leaning against the doorframe, holding a bottle of bleach and a rag. She had been helping me clean the bathrooms. I quickly shoved the receipt into my pocket. Nothing. Just checking if the jacket needed dry cleaning. Candace's eyes narrowed. She walked into the room, her gaze falling on the dress I had laid out on the bed for the anniversary dinner. It was a stunning navy blue silk gown, the one thing I had bought with money I saved from secretly selling a few illustrations online under a pseudonym. It cost $200, but to me, it was a symbol of the little bit of me that was left. "That's the dress?" Candace asked, wrinkling her nose. "It's tacky." "Brandon liked it," I lied. "Brandon has bad taste." "I mean, he married you," she smirked. She walked past the bed, and then, as if in slow motion, she tripped. The open bottle of bleach in her hand went flying. It didn't splash on the floor. It didn't splash on the rug. It landed directly across the front of the navy blue silk. I gasped, rushing forward. The chemical smell hit me instantly. The dark blue fabric turned a sickly, patchy orange-white right before my eyes. The dress was ruined. Destroyed. Oops, Candace said. She wasn't even trying to look sorry. She stood up, dusting off her hands. Well, looks like you need a new dress. Maybe buy something that covers up more. Nobody wants to see your bony shoulders. Tears pricked my eyes. You did that on purpose, I whispered. The realization hit me hard. It wasn't clumsy. It was calculated. Candace stepped close to me, into my personal space. Her perfume was overpowering. You think you're so special, Grace. You think because you have that trust fund, you're better than us? Brandon told us everything. He told us how you're unstable. How you're imagining things. If you tell him I did this on purpose, who do you think he'll believe? His loving sister? Or his crazy, medicated wife? She poked me hard in the chest. Know your place. I stood there, staring at the ruined dress, the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. Something inside me, a tiny, fragile thread that had been holding me together for 10 years, began to fray. I waited for Brandon to come home. I cooked his dinner, steak, medium rare, with asparagus. I set the table. Veronica and Candace stayed for dinner, of course. They sat on either side of him, laughing, pouring wine, ignoring me completely. I couldn't eat. I just watched him. I watched him cut his steak, his hands steady, his face handsome and relaxed. Brandon, I said, my voice shaking slightly. He didn't look up. What, Grace? Can't you see we're talking? I found a receipt in your pocket, I said. The clinking of silverware stopped. Veronica and Candace went silent, exchanging a look. Brandon slowly put down his knife and fork. He picked up his napkin and dabbed his mouth. You were going through my pockets? He asked, his voice dangerously low. I was hanging up your jacket, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the crumpled slip of paper. It's for a diamond bracelet. $12,000. You told me we were broke. You told me I couldn't buy fruit, Brandon. He stared at the receipt, then at me. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. Like I was a fly buzzing around his head. It's an investment, he said smoothly. For a client's wife. To close a deal. You wouldn't understand business, Grace. A client's wife? I stood up. My legs felt weak. Does this client's wife have the initials AM? Because I saw a text on your phone yesterday from an AM sending you kissy face emojis. Sit down, Grace, Veronica barked. Stop making a scene. No. I shouted. It was the first time I had raised my voice in years. I am your wife. I pay for this house. I pay for your cars. That trust fund is my money, and you're spending it on another woman. Brandon stood up. He was tall, 6'2", and he loomed over the table. Your money? He sneered. You signed that over to me because you're incompetent, Grace. You're sick. Listen to you. You're hysterical. I want a divorce, I said. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I want my money back, and I want you out. The air left the room. Brandon looked at his sisters. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. She needs to learn, he said simply. Veronica stood up first. She was fast. Before I could react, she grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked my head back. You ungrateful little brat, she screamed. Smack. Her hand connected with my cheek. It wasn't a slap, it was a heavy, open-handed blow. My head snapped to the side. Get off me. I tried to push her away, but Candace was there. She grabbed my arms, pinning them behind my back. Brandon, help me. I screamed, looking at my husband. He just stood there, watching. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip. They're just teaching you some respect, Grace. You've been very disrespectful tonight. Let go. I struggled, kicking out. I managed to kick Candace in the shin. You bitch. Candace shrieked. She let go of my arms and shoved me hard. 2 hands, full force against my chest. I flew backward. My feet tangled in the legs of the heavy oak chair. I fell. The world spun. I saw the ceiling, the chandelier, and then the corner of the marble sideboard rushing toward my face. Crack. The sound was wet and sickening, like stepping on a dry branch. Pain. White-hot, blinding, electric pain exploded in the center of my face. It blinded me instantly. I hit the floor, curling into a ball. I couldn't breathe. My mouth filled with something warm and metallic. Oh my God, Veronica said. But she didn't sound scared. She sounded excited. I gasped for air, but my nose was blocked, crushed. I choked on blood. I looked up through one swollen eye. Brandon was standing over me. He nudged my leg with the toe of his expensive Italian shoe. Look what you made them do, he said, shaking his head with mock disappointment. You're so clumsy, Grace. Always causing drama. He crouched down, his face inches from mine. I could smell the wine on his breath. Here's what's going to happen, he whispered. You're going to go upstairs. You're going to lock yourself in the guest room. And on Saturday, for the anniversary, you're going to come with us. You're going to tell everyone how clumsy you are. No, I gurgled, blood bubbling past my lips. Yes, he smiled. Because if you don't, I'll have you declared mentally incompetent by Monday morning. I have the doctors on payroll, Grace. I'll throw you in a facility so deep they won't find you for 20 years. And I'll spend every dime of your money while you rot. He stood up and turned to his sisters. Clean up the blood on the rug. It's vintage. They left me there. They actually left me there, choking on my own blood on the dining room floor. I don't remember crawling up the stairs. I remember the darkness. I remember the way the pain shifted from a sharp agony to a dull, throbbing heavy weight that sat on my face like a lead mask. I made it to the guest bathroom. When I looked in the mirror, I almost vomited. My nose wasn't just broken, it was shattered. It sat crookedly on my face, swollen to twice its size. My left eye was completely shut, a purple and black balloon. Blood was dried in streaks down my chin and neck, staining my white blouse. I looked like a car crash victim. I tried to clean myself up, crying silently. The tears stung the cuts on my face. I couldn't breathe through my nose at all. I had to breathe through my mouth, which was dry and sticky. I locked the door to the guest bedroom. I curled up on the bed, shivering. I didn't have ice. I didn't have painkillers. I just had the darkness and the sound of them downstairs. They were laughing. I could hear the TV. I could hear the pop of a cork. They were celebrating. Sometime around 3 a.m., the pain woke me from a fitful doze. I needed water. I crept to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. The house was silent. As I moved to step back, my foot bumped against an old box in the corner of the closet. It was my art supplies. The ones I had hidden away years ago. I opened the box, my fingers brushing against charcoal sticks and sketch pads. And there, buried at the bottom, was an old burner phone. I had bought it 5 years ago, the first time Brandon had taken my car keys away for my own safety. I had kept it charged, hidden, just in case. But I had never used it. I had been too scared. Too brainwashed. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. 12% battery. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped it. Who could I call? My parents? No, Brandon had charmed them. He told them I was having episodes. Last time I tried to tell my mom about his temper, She told me I needed to stop imagining things and be a better wife. Brandon had poisoned them against me. There was only one person. Natalie. My twin sister. We hadn't spoken in 10 years. Not since the wedding. Natalie had grabbed Brandon by the lapels 5 minutes before the ceremony and told him, "If you hurt her, I will kill you." Brandon had banned her from the wedding. He forced me to choose. Him or her. I chose him. God, I was so stupid. I chose him. I dialed the number. I remembered it by heart. We used to have a secret language, Natalie and I. We knew what the other was thinking. Ring. 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 Hello? Her voice was sleep-rough. It was 3 a.m. But it was her. It was my voice, but stronger. Deeper. Nat, I whispered. My voice was broken, nasal from the injury. Silence on the other end. Then, a sharp intake of breath. Grace? Nat. I couldn't get the words out. A sob ripped through my chest, agonizing and loud. I need you. Where are you? Her voice instantly shifted. No, how are you? No, why haven't you called? Just instant, tactical focus. Home. He, the sisters, my face, Nat. My nose is gone. They broke my face. Is he in the room with you? No. Sleeping. I'm 4 hours away. I'm leaving now. Do not hang up. Do not fall asleep. He took my keys. He took my money. He's going to put me in an asylum, Nat. On Monday. He's not putting you anywhere, Natalie growled. The sound was guttural, terrifying. Listen to me, Gracie. Can you walk? Yes. Good. Stay in the room. Lock the door. Put the dresser in front of it. Do not open it for anyone but me. I'm coming. And Grace? Yeah? I'm bringing the war. The next 4 hours were the longest of my life. I sat against the door, clutching the phone like a lifeline. I watched the battery tick down. 10%. 8%. 5%. At 7 a.m., the sun began to bleed through the curtains. I heard footsteps in the hall. The doorknob rattled. Grace? Brandon's voice. Open up. I held my breath. Don't be childish, Grace. You have chores to do. I didn't answer. He sighed. Fine. Starve. I don't care. But you better be ready for tomorrow. I heard him walk away. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. I'm at the perimeter. Don't come to the front door. Too many cameras. Remember the wine cellar vent? The wine cellar. The house was an old Victorian mansion Brandon had bought to show off. The wine cellar had an old coal chute that led to the back garden, hidden behind the hydrangeas. We had discovered it when we first moved in, before the renovations. I moved the dresser. My body screamed in protest, every muscle aching. I crept into the hallway. The house was quiet. Brandon had left for work. Veronica and Candace were probably sleeping in the guest wing. I made it to the kitchen, then the basement stairs. I moved like a ghost in my own home. I got to the wine cellar. The air was cool and damp. I went to the back wall, behind the racks of expensive Bordeaux that Brandon collected but never drank. I found the latch for the old chute. It was rusted. I pulled. Nothing. I pulled again, putting my weight into it. Pain shot through my face, blinding me. Click. The latch gave way. The small metal door swung open. A pair of boots appeared first. Then black cargo pants. Then a black tactical hoodie. Natalie slid through the opening, dropping to the floor with a silent grace. She stood up and turned to face me. It was like looking in a funhouse mirror. She had my face, my eyes, my hair. But where I was gaunt, pale, and broken, she was vibrant. She was muscular, her shoulders broad and set. She had a small scar on her chin from a motorcycle accident years ago. She looked at me. Her eyes widened. She took one step and gently cupped my face. Her hands were rough, calloused. Warm. "Oh, Gracie," she breathed. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. They just burned. "He did this?" "Veronica," I whispered. Candace held me. "Brandon," he watched. He drank wine and watched. Natalie's jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth would crack. The vein in her temple pulsed. "I'm going to kill him," she said calmly. "I'm going upstairs, and I'm going to beat him until he stops moving." She turned toward the stairs. "No." I grabbed her arm. My grip was weak, but it stopped her. "Nat, no. If you beat him, he wins. He calls the police. You go to jail. I go to the asylum. He keeps the money. He wins." Natalie looked at me, fury radiating off her like heat waves. "So what? We let him get away with it?" "No," I said. A new feeling was rising in my chest. It wasn't fear. It was cold. It was sharp. It was hate. "We don't just want blood, Nat. I want everything. I want his money. I want his reputation. I want his freedom. I want to destroy him completely." Natalie looked at me, really looked at me. A slow, dark smile spread across her face. "Okay," she said. "That's my sister. What's the plan?" "We need evidence," I said. "He's been stealing from the trust. He has files on his computer. And the cameras, he has cameras everywhere. The dining room. He recorded it, Nat. I know he did. He keeps insurance on everyone. Where is he now?" "Work. But the sisters are here." "Good," Natalie cracked her knuckles. "I need to get into his computer. Do you know the password?" "No. But I know who does." "Who?" "His mother." "Wait, the old bat?" "She's in on it, Nat. She's the one who found the doctors for the asylum. They email all the time. Her password for everything is Brandon #1. Natalie snorted. "Gross. Okay. We need to get you somewhere safe while I work." "No. I'm staying. If I leave, they'll know. We have to do this tonight. The anniversary dinner." "You want to go to that dinner looking like this?" Natalie gestured to my face. "Yes," I said. "I want everyone to see. I want 50 witnesses when you take him down." Natalie nodded. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a sleek laptop and a strange-looking USB drive. "Okay. Here's the play. I'm going to hack his system. I need 30 minutes. You go back upstairs. Be the victim. Don't let them know I'm here." "What if they find you?" Natalie pulled up her hoodie, revealing a glimpse of a holster under her arm. She wasn't carrying a gun, but she had a baton and a taser. "I pity them if they do," she said. I went back to the room. I waited. Downstairs, Natalie was moving. She wasn't just my sister, she was a professional. She ran a security firm now. She knew how to bypass alarms, how to clone hard drives. An hour later, my burner phone buzzed. Got it all. The videos. The bank transfers. The emails with his mom plotting the conservatorship. "It's worse than you thought, Grace. He's been poisoning you. The vitamins he gives you every morning? They're sedatives and mild hallucinogens. That's why you felt crazy. I stared at the screen. The vitamins. Every morning, he insisted I take them. For your health, babe. He had been drugging me. 4 years. I felt sick. Physically ill. But the anger was a solid steel rod in my spine now. I'm coming up, Natalie texted. Check the hallway. I checked. Clear. Natalie slipped into my room. She had a bag of makeup, but not the kind I used. This was theatrical stuff. Stage makeup. We aren't covering this up, she said, looking at my face. We're going to make sure the lights catch every single bruise. I'm going to contour the swelling so even the people in the back row can see the damage. She worked on my face with gentle, precise strokes. She cleaned the dried blood but left the cuts angry and red. She highlighted the yellowing edges of the bruises. You're beautiful, she whispered when she was done. You look like a survivor. I'm terrified, I admitted. My hands were shaking. What if he stops us? What if the police don't come? I already sent the package to Dad's lawyer, Mr. Davis, Natalie said. Remember him? The shark? Dad's lawyer? Yeah. I called Mom and Dad while I was downstairs. They're crying, Grace. They're devastated. They're on their way to the restaurant now. They're bringing the police. But we need to stall. We need to get him to admit it in public. That's the nail in the coffin. How? He's arrogant, Natalie said. He thinks he owns you. He thinks you're broken. Let him believe it. Let him gloat. When he feels safe, he'll slip up. We heard the front door open downstairs. Brandon was home. Showtime, Natalie whispered. She slipped into the closet, hiding behind my rows of old coats. Brandon stormed into the room 5 minutes later. He didn't even knock. Get up, he barked. The makeup artist is here. Oh, wait. He looked at my face and laughed. A cruel, barking sound. No amount of makeup is going to fix that. Just put on the dress. The old one. Since Candace ruined the new one. He threw a dress at me. It was an old gray thing, shapeless. He wanted me to look pathetic. Yes, Brandon, I whispered, keeping my eyes down. And remember, he grabbed my chin, squeezing the bruise. I whimpered. One wrong word, and you never see daylight again. I promise, I said. I'll be good. Good girl. He left. Natalie stepped out of the closet. Her eyes were wet, but her fists were clenched. I'm going to enjoy this, she said. I'm going to enjoy this so much. The car ride was silent. Brandon drove. Veronica and Candace sat in the back, giggling and taking selfies. Grace looks like a raccoon, Candace whispered loudly. A zombie raccoon, Veronica corrected. They laughed. Brandon smirked in the rearview mirror. We arrived at Lou Bernardin. The valet opened the door. He took one look at my face and his eyes widened. He looked at Brandon, then back at me. Is everything okay, ma'am? The valet asked, his voice low. Brandon stepped in immediately, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. She had a nasty fall. Clumsy girl. We're getting her treated. He shoved $100 bill into the valet's pocket. Keep the car close. The valet didn't look convinced, but he took the money. We walked in. And that brings us back to the moment. The silence. The stares. Brandon's speech. My sisters taught her some respect. I stood there, feeling the eyes of 50 people on me. I saw Mrs. Gable, the banker's wife, cover her mouth with her napkin. I saw Mr. Henderson, Brandon's biggest investor, frown deeply. Grace, Brandon said, squeezing my arm. Tell everyone how thankful you are for my family's guidance. He was handing me the microphone. He wanted me to thank them for beating me. It was the ultimate humiliation. I took the microphone. My hand was steady now. The trembling had stopped. I looked at the camera crew Brandon had hired to film the event. Make sure you're recording, I thought. I want to thank the family, I said, my voice raspy but clear. For showing me exactly who they are. Brandon frowned. That wasn't the script. And I want to introduce you all, I continued, looking toward the double doors, to the only family I have left. Boom. The doors flew open. Natalie stood there. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was wearing black tactical pants, combat boots, and a tight black tank top that showed off her sculpted arms. She looked like an avenging angel. The room gasped again. They looked from me to her. Identical faces. One broken, one fierce. Who the hell is that? Candace shrieked. Natalie didn't speak. She walked into the room. Her stride was long and purposeful. Brandon stepped forward, letting go of me. Security. Who let this person in? Hello, Brandon, Natalie said. Her voice was the same as mine, but deeper, echoing with power. Remember me? Natalie? Brandon's face went pale. You're not allowed here. You beat my sister, Natalie said. She wasn't shouting. She was stating a fact. She stopped 10 feet away from him. She fell. Veronica yelled. She's a clumsy idiot. Natalie turned her head slowly to look at Veronica. You slapped her first. Open hand. Left cheek. Then Candace pinned her arms. Then Candace shoved her into the sideboard. How do you know that? Candace stammered. Natalie pointed to the large projection screen behind the head table, which was currently displaying a slideshow of our happy marriage photos. Because, Natalie said. We watched the tape. She pulled a remote from her pocket and pressed a button. The slideshow vanished. A grainy, high-definition video appeared. It was the dining room footage. The room went dead silent. On the screen, everyone watched Veronica slap me. They watched Candace shove me. They heard the sickening crack of my nose breaking. They saw Brandon drinking his wine, stepping over my bleeding body, and saying, "Clean up the blood. The rug is vintage." Brandon froze. He looked at the screen, then at the audience. The horror in the room was palpable. People were standing up now. Angry murmurs turned into shouts. You monster! Mrs. Gable screamed. Brandon panicked. He turned to me, his face twisting into a snarl. You bitch! You set me up! He lunged for me. This was the moment. The payoff. I didn't flinch. Because he never reached me. Natalie moved. It was a blur. She intercepted him, grabbing his outstretched arm. She pivoted, using his own momentum against him. Slam. She flipped him. A perfect judo throw. Brandon, all 6'2" of him, flew through the air and crashed onto the hardwood floor. The breath left him in a wheezing whoosh. Veronica screamed and ran at Natalie, swinging her purse. Natalie didn't even look. She caught Veronica's arm, twisted it behind her back, and shoved her down next to Brandon. Candace tried to run for the door. Oh no you don't, a deep voice boomed. My father, flanked by 2 police officers, stepped into the doorway, blocking her path. It's over, Brandon, I said into the microphone. I looked down at my husband, who was gasping for air on the floor, trying to get up. Natalie put a heavy boot on his chest, pinning him down. She leaned over him, her face inches from his. You wanted to teach her respect? Natalie whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. Class is in session. The police moved in. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting tight is distinct. It's a sharp, mechanical click-click-click that cuts through any ambient noise. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. Brandon was writhing on the floor of Lou Bernardin's private dining room, his expensive Italian suit now scuffed and gathering dust. Natalie's boot was still planted firmly on his sternum, keeping him pinned like a butterfly in a display case. "Get off me! Do you know who I am?" Brandon screamed, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. "I am Brandon Calloway. I own this town. Officer, arrest this maniac. She assaulted me." Officer Miller, a burly man with a salt and pepper mustache who had walked in with my father, looked down at Brandon with utter disdain. He didn't reach for his cuffs immediately. He let Brandon struggle for a few seconds longer, let the humiliation soak in. "We saw the video, Mr. Calloway," Officer Miller said, his voice flat. "And we have about 50 witnesses here who just heard you brag about your sisters teaching your wife respect. That sounds like a confession to conspiracy to commit assault." "It was a joke." Brandon spat, spittle flying from his lips. "It was a figure of speech. My wife is clumsy. She fell. Tell them, Grace. Tell them you fell." He craned his neck to look at me, his eyes wide and desperate. For 10 years, that look would have made me crumble. It would have made me apologize, shrink, and lie to protect him. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at my father. My dad, the man who had always been too gentle, too conflict-averse, was standing over Candace. She was crying hysterically, clutching her bruised arm where she had hit the floor. "Don't you dare touch my daughter again," Dad said, his voice trembling not with fear, but with a decade of suppressed rage. "If you ever come near Grace or Natalie again, I won't call the police. I'll handle it myself." "Dad," I whispered. He turned to me, and his face crumbled. He rushed over, avoiding the police who were now swarming the room, and wrapped his arms around me. He was careful not to touch my face, but he held me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "I'm so sorry, Gracie," he sobbed into my hair. "I'm so sorry we didn't see it. I'm so sorry." "It's okay, Dad," I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. "It's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. The paramedics arrived. They were pushing a gurney through the stunned crowd of guests. The guests, Brandon's business partners, our neighbors, people I had hosted for dinner parties, were shrinking back against the walls. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and horror. Some of them were crying. Others, the men mostly, looked ashamed, staring at their shoes. They had laughed. They had toasted. And now they realized they had been cheering for a monster. "Ma'am, we need to check that nose," a female paramedic said gently, guiding me to a chair. As she shone a light into my eyes, checking for a concussion, I watched the police haul them away. Veronica was the first to go. She was screaming, "My dress! You're ruining my dress! Do you know how much this cost?" as an officer shoved her toward the door. She didn't care about the assault charge. She cared about the silk. Candace was next. She was sobbing, playing the victim, limping theatrically. "She attacked me. The twin. She's crazy. She knows karate or something." And then, Brandon. 2 officers hauled him up. He wasn't screaming anymore. He had gone deadly silent. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the crowd, looking for an ally. He locked eyes with Mr. Henderson, his biggest investor. "Jim," Brandon said, his voice pleading. "Jim, call my lawyer. This is a misunderstanding. You know me. You know I'm a good guy." Jim Henderson, a man who had been at our house for barbecues every 4th of July, slowly reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my legal team, Brandon," Jim said coldly. Brandon looked relieved for a split second. "Thank you, Jim. Thank you." "To dissolve our partnership," Jim finished, his voice cutting like a knife. "And to sue you for embezzlement. If you treat your wife like this, I can only imagine what you've been doing with my money." Brandon's face went slack. That was the moment he truly broke. Not when Natalie threw him, but when he realized his money, his God, was gone. As they dragged him out, he looked back at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes. No regret. Just pure, unadulterated hatred. "You're dead, Grace," he screamed, his voice echoing down the hallway. "You're nothing without me. You're a crazy, broken bitch. I'll ruin you." The door swung shut behind him. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Then, Natalie walked over to me. She wiped a smudge of blood from her cheek, not hers, and grinned. A wild, feral grin. "Happy anniversary, sister," she said. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. The adrenaline was fading, and the pain was coming back in a tidal wave. My face felt like it was on fire. My legs gave out. "Whoa, gotcha," Natalie said, catching me before I hit the floor. "Medic. She's going down." The last thing I remember was the flashing red lights of the ambulance reflecting off the crystal chandelier, and the feeling of my sister's hand holding mine. A grip I promised myself I would never let go of again. I spent the next 3 days in the hospital. The damage was worse than we thought. My nose wasn't just broken, the septum was deviated so badly I needed reconstructive surgery immediately to breathe properly. I had a hairline fracture in my left cheekbone where Candace had shoved me into the furniture. And, perhaps most terrifying of all, my blood work came back with anomalies. Dr. Eris, a toxicology specialist, walked into my room on the second day. My parents were sitting in the corner, holding hands, looking aged by 10 years. Natalie was pacing by the window, talking to her lawyer on the phone. "Mrs. Calloway," Dr. Eris said, looking at his clipboard with a frown. "We found high levels of scopolamine and benzodiazepines in your system." I don't take those," I rasped. My face was heavily bandaged, making it hard to speak. "I only take the vitamins Brandon gives me." Natalie stopped pacing. She hung up the phone and walked over to the bed. "Vitamins?" she asked sharply. "Every morning," I said. "A green one and a yellow one." He said they were for my iron levels. He said I was anemic. Dr. Eris sighed, taking off his glasses. The yellow pills were likely high-dose Valium. The green ones, well, if he was compounding them himself or getting them from a shady source, they explain the memory loss, the compliance, the fog you described. "He was drugging me," I whispered. The realization made my skin crawl. It wasn't just abuse. It was chemical warfare. He was keeping me docile. "He was making you look crazy," Natalie said, her voice shaking with rage. "So when he finally committed you to the asylum, your blood work would show you were abusing prescription meds. It was the perfect setup." My mother burst into tears. My father stood up and walked out of the room. I heard him punch the wall in the hallway. But the hits kept coming. On the third day, Detective Miller, no relation to the officer, came to take my official statement. He brought news about the financial situation. "We executed a search warrant on your husband's office and your home," the detective said. He looked tired. "Mrs. Calloway, are you aware of a limited liability company called Prestige Assets?" "No," I said. "It's a shell company," Natalie answered for me. "Let me guess. Registered in the Caymans?" "Delaware," the detective corrected. "But the money trails go everywhere. Brandon has been siphoning money from your trust fund for 5 years. Roughly $6 million. $6 million? I gasped. But the trust only had 5. "He leveraged your house," the detective said gently. "He took out a second and third mortgage. He maxed out credit cards in your name. Well, on paper, you're bankrupt, Grace." I closed my eyes. I had nothing. No home. No money. Just a broken face and a mountain of debt. But where did the money go? I asked. He didn't buy $6 million worth of suits. The detective shifted uncomfortably. He has a second residence. A condo in the city. We found someone living there. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who? Her name is Ashley Miller. The air left my lungs. Ashley. My best friend from college. The maid of honor at my wedding. The one who drifted away 5 years ago because she said I was too difficult to be around. Ashley? I choked out. She's the AM in his phone? She's also 7 months pregnant, the detective added softly. With his child. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, that I didn't cry. I couldn't. It was beyond tears. It was a cold, hard numbness. My husband had stolen my life, my money, and my sanity to fund a new family with my best friend. Did she know? I asked. Did she know he was beating me? We found text messages, the detective said. She asked him last week, quote, "Did you fix the problem yet? Or is she still whining about the bruise?" She knew, Natalie snarled. Add her to the list. Conspiracy. We're working on it, the detective said. But right now, we need to focus on the arraignment. The sisters are cracking. Cracking? I asked. Veronica and Candace. They've been in a holding cell for 72 hours. No champagne. No phones. They're turning on each other. Veronica says it was Candace's idea to shove you. Candace says Veronica ordered the hit. And both of them, the detective paused, a grim smile appearing, are blaming Brandon. They're saying he manipulated them, Natalie guessed. They're saying he told them you were dangerous, the detective said. He told them you had attacked him in the past. He told them you were a violent schizophrenic and that they needed to protect their brother. They claimed they were acting in defense of their family. It's a lie, I said. They enjoyed it. They laughed. We know, the detective said. We have the video. And that video is going to bury them. But Brandon, he's not cracking. He's lawyered up. He's hired Marcus Thorne. My father walked back into the room. He went pale. Thorne? The quitter? Marcus Thorne was a legendary defense attorney. He cost $1,000 an hour and he didn't lose. He specialized in getting rich, guilty men off the hook. He's going to claim the video was doctored, the detective warned. He's going to claim entrapment. He's going to drag your name through the mud, Grace. Are you ready for this? I looked at my reflection in the dark window of the hospital room. I looked at the bandages. I looked at my sister, who was ready to burn the world down for me. He thinks I'm weak, I said softly. He thinks I'm the same girl who cried when he raised his voice. I turned to the detective. I'm not ready, I said. But I will be. The legal battle didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, grinding war that lasted 6 months. I moved in with my parents. Natalie moved into the guest room next to me. She became my shadow, my bodyguard, and my trainer. While my nose healed, leaving a small, jagged scar across the bridge that the plastic surgeon couldn't quite erase, Natalie started training me. Not just physically, but mentally. Stand up straight, she would bark at me while we jogged in the park. Shoulders back. Stop looking at the ground. Predators look for victims who look down. Look at the horizon. We spent hours in her gym. She taught me Krav Maga. She taught me how to throw a punch, how to break a grip, how to use my elbows. I'm not teaching you to fight, she said one day as I panted on the mat, sweat dripping into my eyes. I'm teaching you that you are dangerous. You need to know that you can hurt someone if you have to. That knowledge changes how you walk into a room. Meanwhile, the legal war was getting ugly. Brandon's lawyer, Thorne, was ruthless. He released stories to the tabloids. Real estate tycoon's wife, secret drug addiction? The evil twin theory, Did Grace's sister stage the attack? They tried to paint Natalie as a violent mercenary who had brainwashed me. They tried to paint me as an unstable junkie who had fallen down the stairs in a drug-induced stupor. But we had something they didn't expect. We had the AM receipt. And we had Ashley Miller. Or rather, we had Ashley Miller's fear. 2 months before the trial, Natalie and I paid a visit to Ashley. She was living in the condo Brandon had bought with my money. We didn't break in. We rang the doorbell. Ashley opened the door. She was huge, 8 months pregnant. When she saw me, saw the scar on my nose, the cold look in my eyes, she tried to slam the door. Natalie put her boot in the jamb. "We just want to talk, Ash," I said. My voice was calm. Scary calm. We walked into the living room. It was filled with baby things. Expensive things. Bought with my trust fund. "Get out," Ashley hissed. "I'll call the police." "Go ahead," Natalie said, sitting on the sofa and putting her feet up on the coffee table. "Tell them you're living in a property purchased with stolen funds. That makes you an accessory to grand larceny. You'll give birth in prison. Have you seen the nursery in the state penitentiary? It's lovely this time of year." Ashley went pale. She clutched her belly. "He told me he was leaving you," she sobbed. The classic excuse. "He told me you were crazy. He said you didn't love him." "And the bruise?" I asked, pointing to my face. "Did he tell you I loved that?" Ashley looked down. I was scared of him too. He has a temper." "We know," I said. "Here's the deal, Ashley. We have the texts. We have the financial records. You're going down with him. Unless..." "Unless what?" "Unless you testify," I said. "You tell the jury everything. Where he hid the money. What he said about the plan to commit me. You turn state's witness, and maybe, just maybe, my lawyer won't press charges against you for receiving stolen property." Ashley looked at her stomach. She looked at her future. It took her exactly 10 seconds to choose herself over Brandon. "He keeps a ledger," she whispered. "In the safe behind the painting in the bedroom. It has everything. The bribes to the doctors. The offshore accounts. Everything." "Thank you," I said. I walked to the door, then stopped. I looked back at my former best friend. "I hope the baby looks like you," I said. "Because if it looks like him, you'll never forget what a monster you slept with." With Ashley's testimony and the ledger, the acquitter ran out of moves. The trial began in November. It was a media circus. But this time I didn't hide. I wore a tailored red suit, the color of power, Natalie said. I wore my hair back, exposing the scar. I sat in the front row as the prosecution played the video. Again. And again. I watched Brandon in the defendant's chair. He had lost weight. His expensive suit hung loosely on him. He looked tired. But when he looked at me, there was still that spark of arrogance. He thought he could charm the jury. Then, Veronica took the stand. She had taken a plea deal. 5 years probation in exchange for testifying against her brother. She threw him under the bus with a speed that was breathtaking. "He told us to do it," Veronica sobbed, fake tears streaming down her face. "He said if we didn't toughen her up, he would cut us off financially. We were afraid of him." Then Candace. Same story. Then Ashley. When Ashley waddled to the stand, Brandon's face turned the color of ash. He stood up. "You bitch," he screamed in the middle of the courtroom. "I bought you that house. I gave you everything. Order. Order." Judge Coleman banged his gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Calloway, or I will have you gagged." Brandon slumped back down. He knew it was over. But the moment I had waited for, the moment that kept me awake at night, was my turn. I took the stand on the final day. Thorne, Brandon's lawyer, tried to rattle me. "Mrs. Calloway," he paced in front of me. "Is it true you have a history of depression?" "Yes," I said. "Is it true you were taking heavy sedatives?" "I was being poisoned by my husband," I corrected him, looking him dead in the eye. "Objection!" Thorne yelled. "Sustained," the judge mumbled, though he looked sympathetic. "Isn't it true," Thorne leaned in, "that you were jealous of your husband's success? That you wanted to ruin him because you felt inadequate?" I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Success?" I asked. "Mr. Thorne, my husband hasn't made a legitimate dollar in 5 years. He stole $6 million from me. He stole my house. He stole my dignity. The only thing Brandon succeeded at was being a parasite." Thorne paused. He looked at the jury. They were nodding. "No further questions," he muttered. As I walked down from the stand, I passed Brandon's table. I stopped. Just for a second. I leaned down. The bailiff stepped forward, but I held up a hand. "Do you know what the irony is, Brandon?" I whispered. He looked up at me, his eyes full of venom. "Go to hell." "You wanted to teach me respect," I said. "And you did. You taught me to respect myself enough to destroy you." The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Assault with a deadly weapon. Grand larceny. Fraud. Coercive control, a new statute the DA threw in. Possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute, the drugs he used on me. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge didn't hold back. "Mr. Calloway," Judge Coleman said, peering over his glasses. "In my 30 years on the bench, I have seen men kill for passion, and I have seen men steal for need. But you destroyed a human being for sport. You treated your wife like livestock. You are a predator in a tailored suit." He sentenced Brandon to 25 years in state prison. No parole for at least 15. Brandon didn't scream this time. He just wept. Ugly, heaving sobs. He looked at his mother in the gallery, but she turned her face away. Even she knew when a ship had sunk. Veronica and Candace got probation and 500 hours of community service. They also had to pay restitution. They would be cleaning graffiti off highway overpasses for the next 3 years. I hoped they had comfortable shoes. As for me? I got the house back. The bank, seeing the fraud conviction, forgave the illegal mortgages Brandon had taken out. It took months of paperwork, but I got my home back. But I didn't want it. It smelled like him. It smelled like fear. I sold it. I sold the furniture. I sold the vintage rugs. I sold the diamond ring he had given me, which turned out to be a high-quality cubic zirconia, of course. With the money from the sale and the recovered assets from Brandon's hidden accounts, we found about $2 million left. I started over. I moved into a loft in the city, near Natalie's gym. A big, open space with huge windows. I started painting again. At first, the paintings were dark. Violent splashes of red and black. Distorted faces. Cages. But slowly, the colors changed. Blues. Golds. Greens. I painted a portrait of Natalie and me. It wasn't realistic. It was abstract. 2 flames intertwined. One jagged and raw, the other steady and bright. I titled it Twin Flame. 6 months after the sentencing, I walked into Natalie's gym. I wasn't just there to train anymore. I was teaching. We had started a program. The Valkyrie Project. Free self-defense and financial literacy classes for women in abusive relationships. I taught the financial part. I taught women how to hide money, how to check credit reports, how to spot the signs of financial abuse. Natalie taught them how to break a nose. One Tuesday evening, a woman walked in. She was young, maybe 24. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. She was holding her arm stiffly against her side. I knew that look. I knew the way she scanned the room for exits. I knew the way she flinched when someone dropped a water bottle. I walked over to her. "Hi," I said. "I'm Grace." She lowered her sunglasses. Her eye was swollen shut. A bruise bloomed across her cheek like spilled ink. I saw your story on YouTube," she whispered. "I saw what you did to your husband." "My sister did the heavy lifting," I smiled gently. "But yeah. We stopped him." "I don't have a twin sister," the girl said, her voice cracking. "I'm alone." I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, just like mine had been that night in the restaurant. "No," I said, looking her in the eye. "You're not alone. You have us. And trust me, we bring the war." The girl started to cry. I hugged her. Over her shoulder, I saw Natalie watching us from across the gym. She nodded, a small, proud smile on her face. I touched the scar on my nose. It was faint now, just a thin white line. It wasn't a mark of shame anymore. It was a reminder. I had been broken. I had been beaten. I had been erased. But I had rebuilt myself. And this time, I built myself out of reinforced steel and fire. I am Grace Calloway. And I am finally, truly, free. Thank you for listening to my story. If you or someone you know is in a situation like I was, don't wait for a broken nose to wake you up. You are stronger than you think. And there is always a way out.